Hi, I'm Warren Zenna, founder and CEO of the CRO Collective, and welcome to the CRO Spotlight Podcast. This show is focused exclusively on the success of chief revenue officers. Each week, we have an open, frank, and free-form conversation with top experts in the revenue space about the CRO role and its critical impact on B2B businesses. This podcast is the place to be for CROs, sales and marketing leaders who aspire to become CROs, and founders who are looking to appoint a CRO or want to support their CRO to succeed. Thanks for listening. Now let's go mix it up.
Hi, welcome. Good to see you again. So as I mentioned before, we're having a CRO roundtable here in Chicago. I'm at the chief offices in Chicago, nicely lent to us by one of my other clients. But Guy Rubin, who was a former guest on the show, is one of the sponsors now. We'll talk a bit about in what capacity. We thought it'd be a great opportunity to do the first ever live sort of, or let's say studio version of a podcast. So welcome back.
In person.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's very different not having a big screen around.
It is. It's a different vibe, but it's cool. So first of all, congratulations. Why don't you tell everybody like some news since you came last and what's going on?
Yeah, so 10 weeks ago now, my business Ebsta that I was the CEO of, we sold the business to a company called Fullcast, which is a business based in Utah, and they're going through a process of acquiring businesses in the go-to-market space and doing a roll-up to build the revenue platform for revenue leaders.
Gotcha. So congrats on that.
Thank you very much.
That's really cool news. So I'm just curious, like, why Fullcast and what was their thinking? A little bit more about some of the insights into what motivated the sale, the purchase.
Well, Ebsta was a bootstrap business. We took on some angel money in the early days, but primarily we were bootstrapped. And while we were achieving a lot of traction in this kind of revenue intelligence space, when I look forward through years, you can see that this whole go-to-market environment is changing so dramatically. And we're going to see so much change in the tech and the insights and the data and AI and so on that we're in this space that we were going to need a lot of capital to try and compete and to win that space.
Yeah, it makes sense. And you have a great offering, and what it does is solves a real important problem. But like I know from my business, it doesn't matter. It's still hard to get the traction early enough to get the gains, So it's great news. I think it's a great partnership. And I happen to know some of the people there, as you know, and I'm familiar with the Silicon Slopes environment. It's amazing what's going on out there. And those are great people. So it's a really, really good partnership. So I'm interested in hearing more about, so you look at this company and it's building essentially almost like a full service stack of sorts for go-to-market. Most companies are making more, specific approaches into point solutions, double down on the point solution. What's the sort of thinking around, in your view, this idea that kind of bringing along a lot of different companies into one?
So if we think about what's happening in go-to-market and the momentum now that we're seeing, we're living in a world where the cost of building tech is going through the floor, but the cost of going to market is going through the roof.
Yeah.
Okay. And so we're seeing anyone and everyone is coming up with all sorts of interesting kind of AI tools that are almost amazing. And they sound good, but once you start playing with these things, they're not quite ready for market. At least most of them.
I agree.
And I think there's so much choice out there. I mean, every day there's something like a dozen new tech or AI products coming in the go-to-market space.
Yeah.
And so it's getting busier and noisier as we go. The challenge that a lot of the customers are having is that they're trying all these disparate tools, but there doesn't seem to be a consistent approach to it. And you get some early adopters that are liking this feature or that product. And I think if you think about the market at the moment, AI is kind of falling into one of three categories. You've got some very, very niche use cases where someone has a very specific challenge they're trying to address, and they might use some AI tools to do that. And that's really great, but it's not really scalable. It's not for the rest of the business. It's just for a very particular niche. Then, as I said before, you've got these tools that are out there that are almost amazing, but once you start stress testing them, it turns out that actually the interactions with the customers aren't quite what you'd expect them to be. There's a lot of noise. Perhaps it's right 9 out of 10 times, and that 1 out of 10 is causing a lot of pain. And then you've got adoption issues. I came across a company the other day, sub 2 million ARR, and they've got 150 agents, right? It's like, well, how are your customers ever going to adopt that? Let's get them adopting one properly.
Agreed.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So you've got all of this noise in the market, and but there's very few people who have actually broken the back of it. And in my opinion, when I look forward as to what's going to happen in go-to-market and the technology that you need, it's going to be more important than ever that this stuff is joined up. And rather than going into this kind of world of individual point solutions all over the business, which aren't really talking to each other, I think we're going to find ourselves in a place where companies are leaning in on perhaps a single data platform that covers everything in go-to-market, where you've got then agent, you've got that data being turned into insights, and then you've got agents sitting on top of those insights that are delivering value and helping solve specific use cases.
Yeah.
And when you look at the larger organizations, they've got real complex challenges, and those things can't be fixed or solved with individual point solutions. And so when we decided to make a decision, when we decided we were going to sell the business, we ended up having conversations with 4 different companies. But the vision that the leadership team at Fullcast had was just so much greater and so much clearer than the others. And as you rightly said, the community in Salt Lake City is just incredible. The caliber of resources that they've got access to and the vision that they got as to what direction travel this thing is going in really aligned with my thoughts too. And they were already on that journey. The first business that they acquired was Fullcast themselves.
Okay.
And that's a territory planning product. And I didn't realize how complex territories really are.
It really is.
It can be a real challenge. And actually, as I'm a data guy, so I started diving into the data, and you can see where territories are over-resourced, the revenue per seller is too low. And when it's under-resourced, the win rates drop because they're not giving each individual opportunity the attention that it needs.
Yeah.
The challenge businesses have is they're working through territories through spreadsheets and getting individual sellers moving from one territory to another. And they've got deals in flight on territory A, but now they're focused on territory B. All of this stuff can get very complex very quickly. So that was the first product that they took to market, and really blown away when I saw that. Then they acquired a business in the commission space, a business called Commissionly.
Yep.
Then Ebsta and Atrium were acquired, and then more recently they just announced the acquisition of Copy AI.
Right.
So when you think about how this stuff comes together, there's an amazing narrative there that allows out the enterprise customer to have one consistent experience on the whole go-to-market motion, effectively building one revenue platform for the revenue leader.
All makes sense. And I could see the wisdom in particularly territory manager, because you need the data to know what's wrong with the territory, but you need a tool to get that data. And if they don't have a good one, they're doing it themselves that way. So by having Ebsta come at the front end is the perfect way to get that data to give them the insights needed for the next one. It's like everything leads to the next thing.
Exactly.
You really need more data per layer to inform the next layer, or else you sort of have a broken system. And I do think the problem you mentioned, aside from, I agree that a lot of these tools are coming out too fast. They look good on a demo. They're hard to manage, but then they sort of don't connect to anything, and you're left with something, but you can't progress to the next level in the same way. Now, I do think that as things mature, that's going to close up. And I think the race there is going to be fascinating when you look at all the players in the go-to-market space, but you certainly can't argue with the wisdom of this decision and how these things link together, particularly with tools like how your platform is like the entry point to this whole thing.
Yeah, look, we call it kind of plan to pay, right?
Yeah.
So it's all the way through that cycle, and the vision, and we've all seen. There's lots of interesting businesses out there that are trying to solve really interesting tech challenges, and very quickly you can go, well, that's an interesting problem, and it sounds great. You're trying to solve that, great, but when you get into it, do they really have the caliber of resources to actually execute? Are they really able to scale that business model? And more often than not, the talk doesn't necessarily match the reality very much. And what really hit me when I met with Ryan Westwood, who's the CEO of the group, and his leadership team, was that clarity was there. They are not going to let anything get in their way, and they are very focused on becoming this revenue platform for revenue leads.
So you mentioned before we had a little chat about how you think that the go-to-market space is going to look different in 3 years.
Yes.
So what do you think it's going to look like?
Well, as I say, I think we're going to see a lot of consolidation. I think I don't think there's going to be as many players in the space as we're seeing at the moment. There's a whole host of AI companies out there. and everyone seems to be pitching the same point solutions.
Yep.
But I'm not seeing as much value. I'm not seeing people are actually getting the value out of these things, and a lot of that's just down to the maturity of the technology, but also it takes a lot more. You need a combination of data, insights, technology, and service or change agents to actually. And when you bring all of that stuff together, special things happen. And we see it. We see it in the data. Introducing consistency in go-to-market is what this whole motion is all about. If we really are going to achieve profitable, efficient growth, it only comes if everybody's singing off the same sheet.
No question.
So, and most organizations are nowhere near that at the moment. You ask the VP sales, marketing, and success what their ICP is, they're going to give you different answers.
Right.
But actually, we don't need them to have an opinion. The data will tell us what ICP looks like.
Yeah.
Right. And ICP is something that evolves and changes. And the more data points you can throw at it, the more clarity you can get. So, for example, maybe the organization is going through a growth phase, maybe they just raised money, maybe they're about to exit the business. So all of these things influence whether they fall into or out of your ICP. And so the more information you've got visibility over, and giving the right information to the right person at the right time, and getting out of their way. What AI is very good at is taking away all the admin that frankly sellers were never good at in the first place. What AI is really bad at is building really good relationships with customers, building that trust, running a sales function, and then actually closing deals.
Yes.
Right. And so that's what our salespeople are good at. And I think what the AI will do, the good AI, will start facilitating that. And we were in a world 2 or 3 years ago where it was, how do we get our B players to act more like A players? Now we're in a world where, do you know what? If the B players can't step up, let's move them on, and let's enable the A players to do 50% more.
Yeah.
Okay, and we can do that by filling their diary with the right types of meetings and taking away all the burden, all the distractions, so that they're able to perform at a high level.
Hey, everyone. I want to thank you again for listening. Get great comments across LinkedIn and other channels about the show, and it's really gratifying to see that we're having an impact on you. Another thing I wanted to let everybody know is that we also produce events. About 2.5 years ago, we started these CRO roundtables, predicated on the idea that, well, 2 premises. One is CROs are looking for other CROs to talk to, which is really true. It's a very lonely job. And how do we get a bunch of CROs in a room where they're not being, let's say, disintermediated by panel discussions and sponsorship events and demos and stuff, and really give them a chance to talk to each other? So we created a roundtable event that is essentially that. It's a 3.5, 4-hour discussion between 20 and 30 chief revenue officers. And these are amazing events. The format took off. People love them. And I get requests all the time as to when is your next CRO event. So to that end, I just want to let you all know that we have a number of roundtables coming up over next year, over the next 2026. And I want to share them with you so you can, if they're in your market, you can come. So the next one we're having is going to be in London, actually, in February 24th in London. So if you happen to be a chief revenue officer in the UK or even in Europe and you want to come by, you'll be hearing about it more on my website and LinkedIn, but put it on your calendar. And then following that, we're probably going to be doing an event in San Francisco in March. There's going to be one in New York in March. I'm going to do another one in Chicago, probably in April. And then I'm going to do an event in Boston. I'll do an event in Atlanta. I'm going to do an event in Salt Lake City. I'm going to do an event in Austin. And I'm going to do an event in Los Angeles or the Southern California area. So those dates are to be determined, but they'll be going across all next year. And these events are taking on huge momentum. They're the place to be if you're a chief revenue officer and you want to be in a room with no interruptions and have an opportunity to really share with each other in a sort of a private and confidential, open discussion about everything that you want to talk about as a chief revenue officer and collaborate with great people. So thank you. And thanks for supporting the show. And I look forward to seeing you at the events.
Yeah, it's interesting to me because I don't know how far away from we are with this. I don't know if there's going to be a CRM anymore. Like the idea of us entering data into a sheet and entering stuff into forms and chasing people to do it all the time. We're at a point already where we sort of gummed it up a way that it can be done automatically. There's still a form.
Yeah.
I think that form is going to go away. I don't want to be too sort of prognosticator here, but I can't imagine why you would have a data lake of sorts that has everything in it, and you just inquiry into it, and they automatically sort of knows how to look at the data and derive the answer you're looking for. It's we're going to be outcomes driven.
Exactly.
And say, this is what I'm looking for. Help me understand X, and then it'll be able to look at the data, give you it back. But I think the key is going to become knowing what questions to ask it, because you don't ask the right questions a lot of the time. But you and I are in this situation a lot, and we see that people just sort of like they're asking the same questions that they're used to asking, but they're not asking the right ones.
Yeah.
So you don't get the right answer.
Yeah.
So I think the training is going to come in sort of knowing more and being clear about what outcome you're looking to get so that you can get the right information out of it. And I think that's a shift, is a much different shift than hoping that you do stuff long enough, you'll start to figure something out. It's going to become a much different flip thing. And I think companies that have interfaces and stuff are going to be sort of not as big anymore. I don't know. I'm definitely seeing that. Plus, I almost always talk to my computer now.
Yeah.
I very rarely type anymore.
Yeah.
So I'm getting better at speaking what I want in ways to these machines. And I'm seeing a lot of this. So I'm just curious, in your perspective, how long is it going to be before I don't know if you know the answer, but you're on top of this stuff all the time. How far are we away from the point where we're just sort of really just allowing things to come to us as opposed to a lot of these tools that we have to connect together?
Yeah, I for what it's worth, I agree. I don't think CRM is a long-term play anymore. Now, whether people call what comes next CRM or not is another question. But
Right.
I think what will happen is we'll all become managers. But instead of having human teams, we're going to have a teams of agents that are serving us.
Mm-hmm.
But you're absolutely right. We've got to get that data lake correct.
It's got to be right.
It's got to be right. And the data is coming from all sorts of sources. And it's not good enough to just solve one specific use case, because you don't have enough data to do that. So we need a data lake that covers everything from plan to pay. And then we need that data to be interpreted. And then we need agents that can use those insights to actually drive the right outcomes for the sellers and ultimately the buyer.
Right.
So yeah, I agree with you. And I think the companies that are not investing right now are the ones that are going to fall behind very quickly.
Yeah, it's interesting. I see this too. So, I have clients who live in weird bubbles. Like you and I, we're in this stuff a lot. I talk about this all the time. So I sort of have this awareness of things. And I speak to other people, other industries, they don't know anything about it. It's almost like they're not aware of it at all. They hear about this stuff, but it's all more very superficial things like weird videos they see and talking and stuff. But they don't work with these things on a day-to-day basis. There's still a much larger audience of people that need to be educated about these things.
Yeah.
Because, in the SaaS business, stuff like that, it's table stakes for us. I think we're deluded into thinking that there's a lot more awareness than there isn't. We're very much part of like a bubble of sorts in a way. And I think that it could be, I was saying last night, we had dinner last night. Things are moving fast, but they still take a lot longer to happen than we think.
I think that's very true. And also, while everything is changing, nothing's changing as well, right? We still need to be curious as sellers. Yeah. We still need to run structured processes. Still need to help buyers through their buying journey. My gut feel is that buyers are doing more and more of the buying process without the seller involved.
That's for sure.
And we're seeing technology now that can help a buyer build a whole complex business case without ever talking to a seller. Mm-hmm. Because the case studies are on the website, right. And you answer a few questions and here's your case study, and it looks, or your business case, and it looks beautiful, and it's got all the pictures within it. Yeah. And rather than needing sellers, I think what we're going to be leaning into more is it's kind of the clay model, where you've got more solution engineers there to support the buyer, mm-hmm. rather than sellers there to sell them something. Yeah. So I think that's the direction of travel we're going in. We're also seeing in the data that the partnership motion is taking off in a way I've never seen before. If you're not already engaging with getting a material amount of your revenue now through partners, you're either going to fall behind or you're going to need to invest in that.
Sure.
People are leaning into their communities, they're leaning into their networks, they're leaning into references. And imagine if a buyer could speak to one of your customers before they speak to you. And ultimately, the buyer gets to choose who they want to talk to. Do I want to talk to a salesperson? Do I want to talk to a solution engineer? Do I want to talk to an existing customer? Mm-hmm. Right? And there's going to be ways of breaking down those barriers, because ultimately sellers at the moment are really just intermediaries. They're trying to facilitate a process. Mm-hmm. And there's the technologies out there to do that, and the buyers want to go through that process in a more efficient way than talk to a really expensive seller who maybe doesn't have all the information they want and is giving them an angle that maybe they don't want to hear.
Yep. Seriously, I was buying a car again recently, and I haven't really ever bought a car like this before, where I have a very specific vehicle I want with specific features, and there's price issues, and I was getting into that. So I started using ChatGPT, and I did all this research, and I basically trained it to be sort of like a car buying consultant for me.
Okay, great.
Right. And I had this dialogue with it, and I was like, all right, so here's the car I want, actually, here's the car I'm thinking about getting.
Yeah.
And here's what I want to do. Let me know if this is the right vehicle for me.
Yeah.
Am I just wrong because I think it's a good looking car, or maybe because I'm attracted to it? Like maybe it actually isn't really what I think. But I know, this is the point, if I spoke to the car dealer, he would absolutely tell me it was the right car.
Of course.
Of course he would, right? Yeah. So it basically helped me make choices. It showed me these 3 models of the same vehicle that had different features, and why the one that they were selecting might be a better choice for me based on the things I wanted and the costs, I think, the preferences I had. Then it helped me find where that configuration was available within my 50 radius or 100-mile radius, that they're on the lot right now with the VIN number on them. And then it offered me a script of how I should speak to the dealer when I go into the dealer, and the way that I should ask for the car. It was great. And I thought, these guys are screwed because, that's an environment where you're really fighting a bunch of gladiators. And to your point, I'm a far more educated customer now. That business has to change their model dramatically. And I think that that's indicative of the way anyone's selling anything anymore. So a lot smart, even doctors, people come into the doctor's office really smart about things.
Yeah.
Okay. So here's the question that I have is, what's that shift going to look like in your view? The way that buyers are going to manage people, go-to-market systems being smarter. Because this is like a whole other shift too, is on the other side of it. We're talking about selling things to people, but the buyers now have a whole other advantage. I think that there might be almost like evens out in a weird way. We're going to be smart about go-to-market. They're going to be smart about buying. I think the purchasing decision is going to happen in a much shorter, because everyone's going to come to the table knowing enough that there's probably 3 things to work out,
Yeah, no, I hear you. I think, again, what we're seeing is that people will make their decisions based on their network. So the idea that we talked earlier about the fact that cost of building tech is going through the floor.
Sure, it's easy. Easy, but it's faster.
Thank you so much again for listening to the CRO Spotlight Podcast. This podcast is an important plank in the CRO Collective communication strategy, and we're really thrilled to have such great guests on here. So listening and sharing the podcast with other people is really vital, because we want to get as many people listening to this great stuff as possible. A couple of things to note. If you're a aspiring CRO or a recently hired CRO or even an old salty CRO, and you're looking to either become a chief revenue officer or improve your chops and gain some more insights and improve your competencies as a chief revenue officer, we offer the CRO Accelerator course. It's 5 years now. It's the first CRO-focused course that was out there. It's a 15-week course that is populated by aspiring chief revenue officers and CROs. We're pretty selective in terms of who can be a member of the CRO Accelerator course. It's people who are probably more ready to be a CRO right now. They have a number of years under their belt as a revenue leader, whether it be a sales leader or a marketing leader or even a RevOps leader. And they either want to move into the C-suite, or they're CROs that want to just make sure that they win in the role. So if you are interested in being a member of the next cohort, please just write me a note on LinkedIn. Just DM me, CRO Accelerator, and we'll set up a time to talk. And then I can send you more information to give you a brochure of the course. So again, CRO Accelerator course, 15-week program for aspiring and newly hired CROs. Take advantage of it. It's been great. And you'll see some more information about it on the website. Thanks.
It's a whole lot faster. Yeah. You can get agents to help you build things, to spin things up very, very quickly. But the cost of going to market is going through the roof.
Very, very, very expensive.
And so, building having a brand that people recognize, having a brand that people trust, having a brand that people will recommend is what's going to make the difference.
Right.
And being in those communities, getting back to a place where people are meeting you and they're shaking hands and so on is all very important. But people are going to lean in much, much more to their network and ask for those recommendations. And then, as you say, they're going to go through that buying process more and more on their own or with their own advisors. And if they need access to a reference site, they're going to find ways of connecting to your customers directly.
Yeah.
So finding ways of doing that or helping to facilitate that, I think, is going to be key. And leaning into those communities. This stuff takes time, but having that go-to-market motion through partners, through community, through networks, is going to be transformational. And it's going to be a barrier for the smaller businesses to come into. And which is why I think we're going to see a lot of consolidation, and a few key brands are going to accelerate away from the rest of the market.
So let's talk about the leadership. So I'm in a company, I'm a chief revenue officer. I now have access to all different sorts of new tools, but I'm already embedded into the tools that I'm currently using. And I have all the friction that comes with making decisions on which tools to buy, how do I evaluate them, how do I implement them? Like, where would a CRO, for example, start in terms of determining how to make those changes when they have to take care of what is on the table right now, but they also have to learn how to innovate, or else they'll lose the game to someone else who's innovating. I run into this a lot. My clients come to me all the time, they're like, what's the right thing for me to do?
So first of all, it's about working out what is the problem that you're trying to solve. What we see a lot is in large organizations in particular, you've got a RevOps team that know what the problems are, and they keep talking to the leadership team about, we've got to solve this, we have these challenges, how are we going to go about it? And the leadership team kind of serve it with lip service. Yeah, we'll get around to that, but we've got to focus on the next quarter's deals, and we'll come around to that later. So I think RevOps has got an amazing role to play. And I think the challenge most organizations have is that RevOps function isn't as senior as it should be. So RevOps really does need a seat at the table alongside, VP sales, VP marketing, VP success. We also need a VP of operations. And that role is a strategic role. And then really the data and the insights will tell us what they need to prioritize. And so one of the things that we did that really was transformed our business, we have all sorts of insights within our platform. I mean, you can't imagine. We know everything from, how multi-threaded you need to be at every stage of the sales cycle, which personas are giving you better outcomes at certain stages, what happens when you spend a certain number of days in a certain stage, on the win rates, all of these things, and many, many more. The challenge we've got is our whole platform is delivered inside Salesforce. And the C-suite that we sell to, they don't open Salesforce. So what we did is come up with a way of extracting the latest insights and delivering it back to our customers in kind of picture format.
Okay.
And so they're able to digest the problems and the challenges that they're facing in a really easy to digest format. And they can see, right, here are the next 3 challenges we need to address this quarter. So I sit with the leadership team of our customers every 3 months, and I walk them through this kind of audit, their whole go-to-market motion. And what it does is it highlights what they need to prioritize. And then 3 months later, we can see whether they actually executed on that. Did they actually have an impact? Did they solve that problem? Are people skipping through stages and that's leading to late stage close loss? Are we not qualifying well enough and therefore we're losing deals far too late and it's costing us too much money? And as soon as they start to see that, look, our early adopters, our more innovative sellers are being a lot more consistent in the way they're working, and we're seeing the outcomes, suddenly the penny drops. And now everybody comes on board. Now you've got a desire, because ultimately, however much ego the sellers might have, ultimately they just want to earn more money. And when you can show them, look, if you can engage the finance persona at stage 2 instead of stage 4, we're going to double our win rates. Look at the data. And now all of a sudden they want to follow that process. So the beauty of fixing the data is that you can convert it into insights that everyone can understand and get behind. And it's the same with the ICP question we talked about earlier, right? We need everyone singing from the same sheet. We need consistency. And then when we got it, we can make small changes that can have a big impact. And so what we're seeing is that by unlocking the insights, now we've got access to these data that's still sitting inside us. We've still got a huge volume of data in our mailboxes, in our call recorders, in our CRM, and all over the business. But if we can bring that data together and convert it into insights that everyone can get behind, then you've now got the opportunity to introduce consistency across the business, which leads to accelerated growth.
So this is fascinating, because I do think that the first thing a CRO needs to do is to get under the bonnet of all this stuff, which is why it is that I've always been attracted to what you guys are doing. Because when I talk to my CRO client, the first time they get their role, the first thing is you got to figure out what's going on. But the problem is you're never given enough time to figure it out.
Yeah.
And you don't have a process to do it. So you're kind of in the dark a bit. You're given maybe a month, do something that takes 3 months with the current tools that people have, and not the right questions to ask.
Yeah.
So a platform like yours is like the easiest way for a CRO to become really smart about a lot of things pretty quickly. And like you said, being able to present a very compelling report to their board and their CEO very quickly and say, this is what's going on. And it sort of makes the CRO a hero in a way of being able to someone who kind of came in fresh, provided all sorts of insights, good news and bad news, right? Mostly not great news, but stuff that needs to be addressed, right? And I think this is like the opportunity, I think, for the incoming chief revenue officer to be able to sort of quickly get themselves situated in a way that they can make intelligent decisions and the foundation of their job, which the most reasons why I see CROs fail is because they don't do that. And they're sitting on top of bad data. And then, 6 or 7 months later, everyone's wondering why this didn't work, because they were never given the opportunity to solve the real inherent problems,
Yeah.
And I do think that this is what's going to create a big shift in the role. I think people in this role are going to be afforded with ability to be successful faster, smarter, faster. And the only thing I'm seeing as a barrier, and I'm interested in your perspective on this, is just given all the tools you're talking about, removing the silos that still impact everything, right? You still got the marketing organization, sales organization. I know you go to work mostly in the sales function, but you and I both know that the marketing organization has a big impact on those things.
Huge.
And you probably reveal a lot of those things in your reports, right? That's the shift I see, is aside from the CRO being smarter, the organizations now need to embrace that there needs to be one leader in charge of a go-to-market organization that can manage all this stuff. Because you take all this stuff and you put it into an organization that's broken up into silos, you got 3 different opinions about it, as opposed to one opinion about it. I think there's 2 things. It's good data, good insights with the right organization. And the barrier we see is it's hard for people to make that leap. It's very difficult for them.
Yeah, well, one of the reasons you and I have been working so closely together, one of the takeaways for me from our engagement, so we've got this whole platform now that we put into our customers, and inevitably there's an implementation process, so we need to get it onboarded and so on. And then, 3 months later, we can give people out their first report and we can show them the whole audit.
Right.
And what you came to us to say was, look, that's all well and good, but we need the customers to commit to this whole kind of buying of software and implementation and activation and so on before they can start to see the insights. Yeah. Is there a way we could break that down? Mm-hmm. And then 6 months ago, what we came up with was, well, what if we could separate the 2? What if buying the licenses was stage 2 rather than stage 1? Yeah. What if we could just connect to the data sources and deliver back the CRO that kind of snapshot of where they are and what's happened over the last 12 months so that they could see where the challenges were, and then they could go about trying to solve their challenges, whether they had their own tech internally or whether they wanted to implement some of what we had, but that could be a separated phase. So it's only recently in the last 6 months where we've had the ability to offer customers the ability to effectively connect all their data sources to us, but we don't give them any tech back. Mm-hmm. All we do is give them that complete audit. And the beauty is it goes back a year and it fixes the data, the incomplete, inconsistent data that everybody's got inside Salesforce. The reason what we hear over and over again is, well, we can't start to affect change because our data is so bad. Yeah. We can't affect change because we don't know what's actually happened in the past. And so we've built this beautiful engine that can actually go back and fix all the historical data. It deals with the data hygiene issues by going to source. So mailboxes, calendars, phone systems, and CRM. And then without the customer having to commit to buying licenses, we can give them that audit. Mm-hmm. Now suddenly they've got that X-ray vision as to what the problems really are, and they can go about trying to fix them. And 3 months later, when we present the next quarter's report, we can start to see how well they're doing at affecting change in those specific areas. Mm-hmm. And what that does is it gives the CRO the edge, and they're able to now understand where they should prioritize, and then they can present back to the leadership team, look, here are all the problems that we've got. We're going to prioritize fixing this quarter. Mm-hmm. And then 3 months later, as an independent, we're coming in and showing them how have we done on that, right? And then they can make and then if they started to have an impact and you can see that it's having an outcome, it's delivering a positive outcome, that's when they can start to double down and invest in whether that's change agents, consultancy services, or buying technology to speed up and ramp up the changes that they want to make. Mm-hmm. But rather than starting with the tech and the data, or starting with the tech and the platform and the implementation, and 3 months in before you start to see an impact, we've decided to switch that round. And a lot of that came through our discussions.
Right. Where it just makes so much more sense to be able to do that fast. Everyone's like, quick return, easy way to get in there. give the CRO a win. And I'll tell you the truth, what it really does for the chief revenue officer, aside from the credibility it gives them, because they really need that. They need to be able to show, like, what's the return on investment for you? Like, we paid a lot of money for you. We searched hard for you. Now go make a difference for us.
Yeah.
If you can come back in 6 weeks with a report like this very quickly, they're like, wow, this was really good. Great. Thank you. Like, we could see a difference happening already just from that knowledge, particularly when it's followed by, now we can track this particular thing. CROs need this. They don't have this. And so that's important. I'm curious about something now. It sounds to me, I think probably thinking about this, PE would be like just a crazily good place for this. I mean, they need this sort of thing. So they go to market in that whole area. Their business is sort of still floundering a little bit. What are your thoughts on private equity and how to kind of get them to adopt these sort of things across their portfolios? Because I think it makes perfect sense to me.
Yeah, so look, we do a lot of work with PE-backed businesses, and again, they are outperforming the rest of the market at the moment. So the work that PE does with their portfolios is having an impact, but they don't have the visibility that they need. Okay. And I think, again, it was that eureka moment that we had together when we realized that actually, if we swap this around and deliver people the insights before they commit to technology, we can give them, it doesn't even need to take 6 weeks. We can deliver them within 2 weeks, that complete go-to-market audit, and giving them visibility of content they just couldn't have just by analyzing just the CRM on its own.
Right.
Because we're connected to all these disparate data sources across the business, we're giving them that one vision. So when we kind of when we had that eureka moment and we swapped them around and we started with the insights, what happened very quickly was we saw that we were able to then offer that as a service to PE.
Yeah.
And we've now got 3 different PEs that are engaging with us to produce these reports for their portfolio companies.
I see. Okay.
And in fact, I thought we might be able to get involved kind of during the acquisition processes that they're doing. We haven't seen that. But the day after, right, we bought this asset. They told us they got this pipeline.
It's interesting, right? So
How
they
much
buy
is
it. Now they want to analyze it.
Now they do.
It
Exactly.
seems to be a perfect due diligence tool, right?
I thought that, but it turns out that more often than not, they're in a competitive tender and they want to minimize the amount of asks on the business until they own it.
It's interesting.
Okay. But once they own it, the first thing they want to know is how real is it, right? And you can't get that data from one source. It doesn't work just from Salesforce. But if you can connect to Salesforce and these other data sources, we can go back a year and give you that X-ray vision as to what's actually going on. And it becomes really easy to identify which problems we want to prioritize and then go.
So it really just accelerates the way they can get that business ramped up. Like,
exactly.
They make the purchase, they evaluate it, and now they know where to go to work, as opposed to waiting 6 months to figure that out the hard way, or maybe not figuring it out at all.
Not very, yeah, or using whatever's available in Salesforce to try and understand what's going on, when in fact Salesforce has only been populated by the sellers themselves, and so it's inconsistent. So, yeah, but it's really been, it feels like we've been pushing against an open door now.
It makes sense. It's interesting too, but I would imagine that PE has sort of like most of them have their own sort of managerial methodology they put across their teams, right?
Yeah.
It'd be cool for them also, I suspect you're thinking about this, is even testing their own management technologies or management processes to see how well those are working, so they can modify their own way that they manage it, not just a company, but the way, whether our model works or not. I mean, it could be an interesting way to have some scale across a lot of different businesses and maybe change the way that they go to market themselves. I don't know, but it just seems like it's not just the one business, it's all businesses and how there are trends in the way that companies are not making that sort of.
Yeah, well, last year we analysed over 650,000 opportunities, representing, I think, $48 billion worth of pipeline. And we produce our benchmark report each year, and it seems to get very well received.
Yeah.
But what's been interesting, and we're looking at data for 2026 now, is looking at how PE are outperforming the rest of the market. Not necessarily, they haven't solved all the problems. They've still got 60% of their sellers missing quota, but the market's seeing 78% of their sellers missing quota. Right. So they are having a positive impact in their approach and their consistent approach and the way that they manage their teams and perhaps the caliber of resources they bring in to actually run their businesses. We are seeing that PE businesses are having better outcomes than the rest of the market, but there's still a long way to go. We live in a world where sellers are spending 3/4 of their time on deals that close lost. Okay, and we spend twice as long on deals that close lost as we do on deals that close won. And so you find yourself in a world where less than 10% of the seller's day is being spent on activities that are going to generate revenue. I don't know any other industry that's that inefficient. And so what that means from our perspective is there's huge opportunity to have big impact. And we talked earlier about, look, a couple of years ago, we try and bring the B players up to A player standard. We can now free up the A players to focus all of their energies and time spending on deals that are going to generate revenue. And the intelligence is there and the data is there to drive that behavior. And we can now achieve a whole lot more with a whole lot less.
So what's your plan for the next year? How are you taking this to market? What's the kind of people looking to speak to? Who's your customer? How have you identified that? How could, maybe some of the people listening to this get a little more understanding of how you can help them?
Well, Fullcast has a whole suite of technology. As I mentioned earlier, they have everything from territory planning through to commissions. Obviously, we're part of the revenue intelligence piece, and then we recently bought Copy AI. And I suspect there might be more to come. The piece of the puzzle I'm now focused on is this revenue insights as a service. And we're now offering that as a standalone solution. So those that are interested in finding out more, get in touch. We can connect with me on LinkedIn, and if they mention the podcast, I promise to accept the invite.
Fair enough.
We can have a conversation and see what that is.
Great. Well, as always, man, it's real exciting. Excited about it. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for listening to the CRO Spotlight Podcast. The CRO Collective's mission is to help CROs succeed and help founders and CEOs build CRO-ready organizations. You can find out more information about our services at thecrocollective.com. That's thecrocollective.com. And we look forward to having you join us next time.